نرحب بالجميع لضيوف الكرام جو من سوريا البعيدة وممثلين للمعارضة السورية. نرحب بكم. I'm glad to welcome you in the very unique event coordinated by the Truman Institute. Syrian Speaks Syria. My name is Ksenia Svetlova. I'm a member of Knesset. I represent the Committee for Foreign Affairs and Defense and also Knesset lobby for the promotion of relations between Israel and Kurdish nation. I'm very glad to be part of this event. I believe that Israelis should know more about the surrounding countries, about what is happening in such a close proximity to our borders. And it's vital for us who live here in this country to build our future together with our neighbors. So I'm glad to also give my gratitudes to everybody who took part in organizing this event. Of course, Professor Roni Shaked from Hebrew University, please. Noama Schefter, Macon Truman Institute. The one and only Dr. Nir Boms. And Moran Levanoni, I thank you very much. So with me present on the stage, two very unique gentlemen. The one is from the extreme right, is Sirwan Kajo. I will represent him, and then, of course, during his speech, he will talk more about his biography. He's a Syrian Kurdish author and journalist from the city of Kamishli in northern eastern Syria, where his family still resides. He came to the US as a political refugee, and he is currently wanted by the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad. Sirwan has been covering the war that launched in 2011 and has entered Syria illegally a number of times, Syria, his homeland, illegally, as recently as last July. He came especially to this event to speak directly to the Israeli public and conveys the voices of those in the northern part of Syria. During our conversation, we will also try to go live with Syria, and both of our guests, some I will represent you in a second, will be, if we will be lucky and we will have the internet connection and we will be able to call Syria, so then we will have a live conversation with people who are in Syria right now for you to hear their perspectives on the current situation. Issam Zaitoun is from the Syrian village of Beit Jan in the Syrian Golan Heights, minutes from the border with Israel, our country. Since the war began, he serves as a liaison between the Free Syrian Army and the local resistance groups, and between international players, which of course include Israel. He has dedicated the last 5 years to bringing the voices of the people of the Syrian Golan to the attention of the world. As a result of his public appearances, he and his family were recently threatened and attacked. Issam maintains daily contact with the opposition and the commanders on the ground in southern Syria, and he will bring their voices to you today. We will be also hearing very soon from Mr. Fahed Al-Masri, who is chairman of the National Salvation Front in Syria. He was in the leadership team of the I'tilaf, the main coalition of Syrian opposition groups. And before we will start our conversation today, I would like to add a few words. The current situation in Syria is gruesome. The manslaughter continues. The bloodshed doesn't stop. After the city of Aleppo was taken by the Syrian forces, of course with the help of Hezbollah, Iran, and the Russian aviation, the situation on the ground, as we are being told, in many other cities became much worse than it used to be. The world is still standing still. The world is not intervening. The forces who do intervene cause more bloodshed. So the question that we also want to discuss with our guests, what do the Syrian want? Because Syria now today speaks in such many voices. As a member of Committee for Foreign Affairs and Defense, sometimes when we discuss the situation and we ask the necessary question of who is there on the other side, is there anybody that we can talk to? Is there anybody who we can coordinate to, but also prepare for the next stage? What will be in Syria tomorrow? Then we receive the horrific numbers that indicate on this horrible split in the Syrian society. 900 armed organizations that operate in the Syrian territories. Someday I was told by one of our security forces that the number is already overreached 1,200 military organizations that working on the ground. And actually it will depend on what hour of the day you will ask who is in charge of specific city. The surroundings of Damascus, Idlib, they go from hands to hands, and the situation is incredibly difficult to follow. So we hope that with your help, we can get some more clarity into what will happen tomorrow. How Israel, in your opinion, should develop relations with its northern neighbor. How should we build our relation with the Syrian nation? And to tell you from my previous experience as a reporter and correspondent on Arab affairs, I worked for the Israeli Channel 9 for 13 years. I had the privilege to visit your country in 2006. I've been to Damascus and Damascus only, and I can tell you that it's a beautiful city. I don't know what is left today from the historical monuments that I visited at the time. Of course, I met many people who were too afraid to speak freely to the journalist, and they were repeating the texts that were they were told to say by the authorities. But I felt that there is much more. There are much more layers, rather than what was presented to us, the journalists who came there at the time, by the official Syria, the Syria of Baath, the Syria of Bashar Assad. These voices are here with us today. Now I would like for us, if it's possible, Nir, to hear the special regards and greetings to this conference from Fahed Al-Masri, the chairman of National Salvation Front in Syria, who is currently in Paris for the consultation for the humanitarian aid and the outcome from the horrific humanitarian tragedy, which is Syria today. Can we have this video, please? The lights, please.
This opportunity to expose our vision for the Israeli people. Further, for the open letter addressed by the Front in Syria to the Israeli people last month, we are pleased to offer our vision for the future of the relationship between Syria and Israel, especially our goal, because our goal is for the new Syria to be outside any conflict of Arab crisis or regional or international, and to focus on reconstruction and development and building a culture of peace. Our vision for security and stability of the state of Israel, because we make a roadmap for peace between Syria and Israel. The security and stability of the state of Israel. The new Syria will not be hostile in any way to the state of Israel, nor any state in the region or international. The new Syria state will not provide any facilities for any groups or military, nor any acts of sabotage targeting the security and safety of Israel or any country from neighboring country and the world. The security and stability of Israel is necessarily linked to the departure of Assad and his regime.
So this was Fahed Al-Masri. Just to emphasize the irony of what is happening right now in the region for the last 5-6 years. The word Israel used to be pronounced in Syria in the context, of course, of the animosity, the Zionist occupation, the horrific accusation of some plots that were conducted by Israel. And of course, we all remember, I remember it from my personal experience, that entering some of the Syrian universities at some point was involving going through the Israeli flag, stepping on the Israeli flag that was painted on the ground. Now we see that actually this process of the Arab Spring allows for some new voices to speak more freely about what the Syrian people want in regards to their future relations with Israel. And now I would like to pass the microphone to Sirwan Kajo, our guest. Please, Sirwan, you have 15 minutes. I would like for you, please, to address the issues of Syrian future, of course, with the emphasis of the Kurdish minority that lives in Syria.
Thank you. Thank you, Knissia. Thank you, Naama, Professor Roni, Nir, Marwan, and all those who have been involved in setting up this great event. I have to say I'm humbled to stand before you as a Syrian. You know exactly what I mean. To be here in Jerusalem and talk to you publicly about the plight of the Syrian people and what's happening in Syria. I know you haven't had the opportunity in the past 6 years since the start of the uprising in Syria to talk to directly to a Syrian who's been through this, who's been watching this very closely. So this is this is of mutual benefit to both of us, because it's also important for us to get out the message that many Syrians want the world, not just Israel, the international community, to hear and to understand the local dynamics of this very complex crisis. I'd like to give a broader picture of what's happening as of now in Syria, focusing a little bit on the Kurdish region where I come from. I come from the city of Qamishli, and that is a town of, well, it's a city of 400,000 people in northeastern Syria. It's right on the border with Turkey, and up to 3 hours away by car from the Iraqi border. So it's in a very strategic corner of the country. I come from a very diverse city. In Qamishli, we have the majority is Kurdish, obviously. We have a large Arab percentage and also many Christians. And we also had a sizable Jewish population, most of whom have come to Israel over the years. But there's still one neighborhood that is called the Jewish quarter that many locals cherish. So it is important for many people to keep up with the heritage of the locality. And now let's talk about Syria. And I'll start with the recent developments in Aleppo, and after the fall of Aleppo, to the Syrian government with the help of Russia and Iran and Hezbollah and other pro-Assad militias in the country. It was a fight that meant to happen for 4 years. Everybody knew that at some point Assad will have to regain Aleppo, because Aleppo is the economic hub for this country, and without it, Assad wouldn't survive on the long run. So it was very significant gain, a strategic gain for Assad to recapture Aleppo from rebels, and that would have not happened without the direct support of Russia. Those airstrikes were very decisive in terms of changing the battle on the ground in favor of the Assad regime, obviously. And they made sure that Assad, if there's any negotiations between the Syrian government and the opposition, Assad will have the upper hand on the ground militarily. So it was very important for them to secure Aleppo before agreeing to the Astana peace talks, for example, in Kazakhstan, or any future Geneva talks discussing a transitional period in Syria. In between, of course, the civilian population is the one that pays the ultimate price. More than 500,000 people, 500,000 people have lost their life, and these are mostly civilians. And if you look at the statistics, the majority of those who have lost their lives in Syria are civilians. On both sides, obviously, civilians who have been killed by Assad, and that's the largest percentage, but civilians who have been killed by ISIS and other extremist groups on the ground. It's a very tough situation, obviously, because it's only civilians that are caught in this cross, the fire cross. So, to be able to understand the Syrian this very complex dynamic, I'll bring one example. I was in Iraqi Kurdistan less than a year ago, and part of my job is to see a lot of refugees both in Iraq and Turkey. And I met this lady in her late 60s. She spent most of her life in Damascus suburb. She had to flee in 2013 and made it all the way to Iraq and northern Iraq. And this is a long distance. Given the different groups controlling different parts of the country. So she had to take a very perilous route to be able to reach safety in Iraqi Kurdistan, although her situation wasn't any better than many of those who had lived in Syria, because they still lack a lot of basic human, basic human needs, such as electricity, water, access to education for the children. So, so she told me this story. I've been telling it to many people in many speaking engagements because it really sums up what it is to be a Syrian. She said I had six children, all of whom were, young men, two girls and four boys. As she was speaking, she said each one of them is in a different direction. Two of them were fighting and forced to fight with the Syrian army. As you know, military in Syria is conscription. And it's mandatory, so it exacerbated after the civil war because Assad kept most of the soldiers, even those who finished their term, to continue the fight. So one of her son had been fighting rebels for almost four years, and one son fights with a certain rebel group near Damascus. One is a refugee in Jordan. One got killed in a bombing in the same neighborhood in Damascus, and the two girls are with her in Iraqi Kurdistan, and that pretty much tells you how it is for a Syrian, an ordinary Syrian, to survive this tough life. These extra unbelievable stories you hear from refugees, but that's pretty much sums up the humanitarian aspect of this. You only see, at some point, a lot of people will say, like, well, today only 50 people died. Well, one is too much, in my opinion. But at some point, people were like, well, just 2 days ago, 500 people got killed in one attack, and now it's 50. So we're happy with this. And you can imagine the volume of audacity for Assad to turn this into all these deaths to mere numbers. So it's hard to describe if you're not living with these people. I was even personally touched by this crisis, like every single person in Syria on both sides of the spectrum. So it's whether you're with the opposition or with the regime, but mostly with the opposition or living in an area under an opposition group control. It's you have been affected in a way or another. I have a nephew who died fighting against ISIS. He was a member of the Kurdish group that is fighting ISIS. I have relatives who are still arrested right now as we speak in Damascus. We don't know where their fate. We don't know where they are. I have many friends in the early stage of the protest while I was in America. Because I wanted to be more involved, so I would talk to people from different backgrounds. I would talk to people from Daraa, from Homs, from Aleppo, from Damascus, from my hometown, just to be able to get a better picture of what was happening because it was so unclear. And I lost so many of those people. People died for basically filming a peaceful protest because that was a danger to Assad, especially in the early day when this movement was peaceful, and Assad turned it brought a sectarian dimension to it, and he succeeded in painting an image that if it's not me, then it's a terrorist group. If it's not me, then it's ISIS, and it's largely worked in his favor. Of course, with the support of terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and many Shia militias from Pakistan all the way to Iran. But I'm going to shift the focus now to the Kurdish issue because I think it's important. Although Kurds haven't been involved in the conflict, and when I say conflict, I'm talking about the conflict between the opposition and the regime. Many Kurdish groups are part of the opposition. You have the Kurdish National Council, and that's the umbrella group for a number of political organizations, and that is part of the main body for the Syrian opposition, Al-Itilaf. And we have a larger group that is now in charge of affairs in North and Northeast Syria, and that's the PYD, the Democratic Union Party. That's a party that has tried to keep a distance from many opposition groups, but also has maintained certain relationship with those same groups in Aleppo, for example. So the Kurds have been able to play a game balance, to keep a balance between different groups, because for many it was an existential threat to be part of this conflict in the very first place. And that's what Assad wanted it to be a sectarian conflict between extremist Sunnis and Alawites, and that's why the Kurds didn't want to be part of that. But with the rise of groups such as Islamic State and Nusra, Kurds were able to secure their region. Of course, it started in 2012 when Assad withdrew his forces voluntarily to focus on fighting the opposition in Idlib and Hama and Homs. And so there was a security and a political vacuum that was filled by local Kurdish groups, and the Kurds were able to set up a local governance, a sort of autonomous region in three regions, I should say, because we have one region, Qamishli, where I come from. If you see the zone up in the north, and then there's Kobani right in the middle. This is along the Turkish border. And you see Afrin in red all the way in the northwest. So it has been affected mostly by ISIS. You all have heard of the battle for Kobani when ISIS tried to penetrate into Kurdish defense lines and take control of the city. But that's where the whole dynamic on the ground changed with the involvement of the U.S. coalition for the first time in the conflict. And this is in October 2014 when the U.S.-led coalition provided air support for local Kurdish groups. And it was an example that forces on the ground can be successful in defending their towns if they get the help needed, The many opposition, many rebel groups were blamed for not being effective in fighting Assad despite getting assistance. But the argument on the other side was that we don't get enough support, we don't get enough military equipment for us to at least keep this city protected. But what can you do when Assad, bomb you with all these bottle bombs and using all type of weapons to eradicate any anti-government movement? Going back to the Kurdish issue, moving forward, I think the best solution for Syria as a whole and for the Kurdish region in particular is to have a federated system. And this is what the Kurds have been calling for the past few years. And even prior to the Syrian revolution, when the whole thing started, there was a disparity between different classes in Syria. We have something called sectionalism in Syria that is very strong and very powerful up to now. See, tribalism is also another factor. So for different groups, different components of this very diverse society, there has to be a sort of agreement, a power-sharing agreement between different groups. So power needs to be delegated to different segments of society, because if you feel like you're excluded from the decision-making process, you can't govern your areas, you can't speak your language, for example, in the case of Kurds and many other minorities, then you will look for other alternative, and would that be split from Syria or anything else? So I think that the moving forward, the approach will be for Syria to be a federated nation where different Sunni groups can govern their areas, and it's very complicated, of course, and it's normal, it's natural, it's a gradual process, and it will take time for so many countries. And so many examples, it took generations for them to understand that decentralization is not necessarily separation. It actually it is the quiet opposite. It only empowers groups to get to know each other, because let's think about it. It's pretty much like how the relationship between it's pretty much the same equation how Israel and the Israeli people doesn't know much about its surroundings, and the same in many people in the region. The majority of people in the region think that Israel is the ultimate enemy. And because these governments in the region didn't allow really their people to understand about this country, about this nation. The same thing within the Syrian community, different communities. They weren't allowed by successive government, but particularly by the Assad regime, to interact with each other safely, to express their own identity safely. That's why it's important for the next stage, for any sort of government, any settlement, whether it's in Geneva or elsewhere, to emphasize on that point that Syria, there's no return port, there's no going back to how it was pre-2011, where Assad will hold power, with an iron fist, and it needs to be delegated, as I said earlier. People need to feel that they are true citizens of this country, and they can govern their affairs locally and take care of their issues without any involvement or interference from Damascus. Many people believe that foreign affairs and defense issues, they can be left for Damascus to take care of, with small details, can and should be resolved and addressed locally. And this has been the case in every successful experience, whether in the region or abroad. And I think we need to learn from the experience of this country. As I'm saying here, although it's a very short visit, I'm learning more about the role of different groups, how functioning this democracy has been, and not only compared to this chaotic region, but also to other, with according to Western values, how the role of NGOs and civil society groups has been effective in changing the public opinion and pressuring the government to make concessions in favor of the public. So we need to understand that things cannot go in one way all the time. At some point, people will realize that, we fought this, we've gone this far for 6 years. Then if the price is for Assad to stay in power and things to go back as it was before 2011, then what was the point? And then that will be a turning point, in my opinion, if things go back to before, which I highly doubt, because we have this is a very multi-layered conflict. It's not about the opposition and the regime. It's about many different actors on both sides. Hezbollah has been so empowered by this war in Syria, in terms of developing, a much stronger capacity in fighting in real war and being able to gain more experience. So this is also dangerous on the long run, not just for Syria and the current situation, but also for the state of Israel, for the regional dynamics. And it will be interesting to see how these things will evolve on that stage, on the regional stage. Same thing goes with groups such as ISIS. How much can ISIS be eradicated? How do you fight the ideology? It's not just about controlling some territory in Iraq and Syria. It's about a very widespread ideology that has taken advantage of new technology and social media. So all these questions, will remain to be seen, and it all really depends on finding a political settlement in Syria. And I will end here. And I'm sure there's so many things to talk about. You can't talk about because of the time constraint. I apologize for not being able to address all issues related to Syria and Syrian Kurds, and thank you very much for listening. بافيارتات شوي.
صعبة.
بعربي باخذن.
بلى.
ما هلا معنا أنور ناسو، هو مثل ما ذكرت ناشط سياسي موجود بمدينة عمودة بشمال شرق سوريا. I forgot that I'm speaking in Arabic. Sorry, I apologize. Changing from Kurdish to Arabic to English has always been a challenge for me, so I apologize. Let's hear from Anwar Naso. I just introduced him to you. He's been arrested 6 times by the Syrian government. He's very active till this day. He's been working with different groups and different youth organizations, and we would like to hear more from him. What's the latest, at least in northeastern Syria, but also in other parts, and the implication of the ceasefire, and also the Russian and Syrian government airstrikes. بس حابين نسمع منك شو آخر التطورات الميدانية على الأرض، إذا فيك تختصرها بجزء بسيط من المقابلة.
مساء الخير للجميع. إيفار باش وتبارة. الأحوال المدنية بشكل عام بسوريا ما زال هناك انتهاكات لبعض المناطق، وفي مناطق ما زال في خرق الهدنة المتفق عليها ما بين تركيا وروسيا. مستمر الوضع على ما هو، لكن في الحقيقة هو أحسن من الأول في كثير من المناطق في وقف إطلاق النار، لكن المناطق التي تسيطر عليها القوى الإرهابية إن كان داعش أو النصرة هناك خروقات للهدنة ووقف إطلاق النار في المنطقة.
So there have been many violations of the ceasefire that was brokered by Russia and Turkey in many parts of the country, especially in Idlib, and of course in other areas where Russia said there are a lot of terrorist elements. But compared to what the situation was prior to the ceasefire, things have improved in many parts of Syria. فيك تحكي لنا على أوضاع الناس هنيك، يعني الحياة اليومية، كيف العالم فيها تتعايش مع الواقع؟ يعني صار لنا 6 سنين العالم ما عندها إمكانيات إنه حتى خدمات أساسية، يعني التعليم بالنسبة للأولاد. فيك تشرح الوضع الميداني هنيك أكثر على الصعيد الإنساني؟
حقيقة هو من بداية الثورة لحتى هلا النظام السوري دمر البنية التحتية في سوريا، فأغلب المناطق عم تعاني من وصول ماء نظيف، كهرباء، محروقات بشكل عام إن كان مازوت أو بنزين إلى آخره، كلها مواد مفقودة في البلد، عدا أنه المناطق أغلب المناطق محاصرة ووصول إمكانيات ومواد غذائية إلى بسهولة صعبة كثير. فالحالة الإنسانية حالة مأساوية بشكل عام بسوريا، وخاصة في الجزيرة ومناطق أخرى إن كان كوباني أو عفرين أو مناطق الداخل في حلب وغيرها.
I asked him a question about the daily life for many Syrians who he interacts with, and of course in other parts of the country. And his answer was that, for the past 6 years, the Syrian regime has destroyed the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure of livelihoods in many parts of Syria. So it's hard, even if the war stops, it's hard for people to survive, at least economically. Food prices have skyrocketed in the past few years. And people are not able to at least provide the basic needs for their family, and education has been many children haven't been to school in many years, which makes it harder for the next generation to deal with the rebuilding process, because it will be the next generation that will take care of that process. But if the situation drags on longer, then it only gets harder for the local population to adapt to the new changes. حابب نسمع منك عن الوضع الكردي بمنطقتك، العوامل الموجودة، الأحزاب الموجودة، الأطراف المتصارعة. فيك تحكي لنا شوي عن الواقع العسكري والسياسي على الصعيد الكردي؟
على الصعيد الكردي بتعرف تاريخيا، يعني من بداية تشكل الدولة السورية في 23 لحد اليوم كل الأنظمة المتعاقبة على سوريا كان قبل كل شيء التوجه إلى الشعب الكردي للمزاودة باسم العروبة والقومية العربية، كان انتهاكات بحق الشعب الكردي، وهي مجموعة انتهاكات كبيرة حصرها في هذا اللقاء تصور صعب كثير. لكن بعد الحراك الثوري صار في الشعب السوري وانتفض الشعب الكردي مثل باقي أبناء سوريا، ونتيجة الانتفاضة وكان مدينة عمودة هي من أهم المدن اللي كانت مشاركة بالحراك الثوري. الآن المشهد السياسي في كردستان سوريا ينقسم بين المجلس الوطني الكردي وتفدم أو حركة المجتمع الديمقراطي ما يسمى بتفدم، والصراع سياسي حقيقة واتجاهين مختلفين. اتجاه المجلس الوطني الكردي متحالف مع قوى المعارضة والثورة، وبيدي الاتحاد الديمقراطي ما يعرف الاتحاد الديمقراطي هو متحالف مع النظام السوري. ولهذه الأسباب هناك صراع حقيقة في المنطقة الكردية، والوضع السياسي ما زال في صراعات بين الطرفين ميدانيا يعني.
I asked him about the current situation, the current dynamics in the Kurdish region where he's speaking with us from. He said that the situation is very complex because, well, he mentioned something about how the Syrian government, successive governments in Damascus used the Arab nationalism, under the banner of Arab nationalism, suppressed the Kurds and persecuted the Kurds as a minority. They weren't allowed to practice their basic rights. But things changed with the Syrian revolution. Many Syrians across the country showed solidarity with the Syrian people, and that allowed the Kurds to be more involved in national in the national movement, not just the Kurdish movement. Of course, in the past few years, things have devolved into two different groups that are basically in charge of the political movement. You have the Kurdish National Council that is pro-opposition and member of the Tilaf, as I mentioned earlier, and still calls for a collapse of the Syrian regime. And on the other hand, you have the Democratic Union Party, the PYD, the group that is in charge of the region, and they have an alliance with Assad in many cases. And so the situation for them is very tricky. For many people, it hasn't even been hasn't been any different from the previous regime under the Damascus government. بس حابين نشكرك على هالمداخلة وشكرا جزيلا على إعطائنا الوقت.
شكرا جزيلا لكم جميعا وخليتونا تسمعوا صوتنا وصوت أبناء الشعب الكردي في كردستان سوريا. ما نتمنى كل القوى الخيرة تساعد أبناء شعبنا بالوصول إلى سوريا ديمقراطية فيدرالية تعددية. شكرا جزيلا.
Shukran. He says that all we want for at this point is to call for, to allow him to speak at this forum, but also to emphasize on our goal of a future pluralistic state in Syria. Shukran. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sirwan. I think it was truly a historical moment, and well, I can tell you I have a small disclosure. I'm a graduate of Hebrew University. I studied here for my MBA, MA, and now I'm a PhD student here. And I'm very proud that such an event is taking place in my academic home. And again, you know, it's a bravo to the organizers. And now I would like to bring here my friend Issam Zaitoun. He became a friend because we already met 2 times. I had the privilege to welcome Issam at the Knesset and to talk to him about the complicated situation in the proximity of the Israeli border. I'm talking about a few hundred meters away from the border area. Issam now will demonstrate also through the map and will tell us about the very serious developments that are happening through the last 2 years, and especially after the battle for Aleppo. Please, Issam Zaitoun.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I am very grateful today to stay here, to the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Dr. Ronnie, Nama, Dr. Nir, and Moran. Senia, thank you very much. I am honored to be here today to speak to you and to the whole world through you to convey the voice of the Syrian and the tribe. The Syrian civilian who were subject by shelling, siege, starvation, and all kind of punishment under a complete absence of all basic human needs, and also complete absence of any role of the international community to find a solution. I'm here to let you know about their suffering, fears, and their aspiration for the future. But the given 20 minutes, I don't think that we'll have a chance to talk about all that. So I will give you briefly an idea about the nature of this regime who's ruling Syria since the 60s, actually. The regime who claims idiocy and playing the role of the victim of terrorism, which is backed by the whole world, by US, by Israel, by Europe, by the Arab countries, everyone. It's cosmic conspiracy for him. Therefore, I would like to mention some headliners and focus on the South Front and the region on the border to Israel in Al Harmoun and Golan Heights. Of course, everyone knows that this regime, it's been talked about, everyone knows that this regime is dictatorship. Bashar al-Assad has years the land like a farm, but also to this country, which is or this regime, which was protected from several security agencies. He got as well, after the death of Hafez al-Assad, a lot of files which is not, he couldn't find any solution for it. For example, the civil war in Lebanon. There's a lot of, too many questions. No one can, a lot of detainees, Lebanese, and also the terrorist intervention in Iraq, what happened in Syria in 82, and as well, the most important thing is the Hariri International Tribunal. That's why I consider that this, what's happening in Syria, it looks like a revolution, and it is, but it was controlled and managed by this regime, who is, as I said, playing the role of the victim. Can I have some water? For almost 50 years, the regime was using his media, his education systems, even the religious discourse, to brainwash the generation so that Israel will remain the only enemy all the time. And he relayed the development of all aspects of life and concentrated only on facing and resisting against the threat of Israel. So he used to use in his media that the battle or the war with Israel is معركة حدود وليست معركة وجود وليست معركة حدود. It's a battle of a war of existence, or not a war of border. As it started, I've been living in Germany for almost 26 years. I left Syria in 1990 because after finishing my college, I had to go to the army. So to the Syrian army means for me either to be sent to Lebanon or to be sent to Hama or to be sent anywhere to kill innocent people. So I refused that idea, so I left. Originally, my name is Isam Zaytoun. Actually, Muhammad Isam Ahmed Isa Muhammad Yusuf Zaytoun al-Naimi al-Qurashi. This name, like my finger drop, and everyone knows me in the region. Now, as it started, so I found myself involved because we are contacting our relevant, our family. We are living the Syrian dilemma, and it was very clear that this war was managed by Assad because he was propagating the people. And we all remember that in 1999, for example, as the Turkey gave him an ultimatum to give Öcalan up, to ask him to leave, he did. And as he left Lebanon, 2005, the same, he was not that powerful man as he is presenting himself now, as one who is fighting against the whole world. he is fighting actually against his people. He prevent any revolution, and he started this war, and he is managing it in the media, in the intelligence, even in diplomacy, and he has unfortunately has very faithful friends. While the Syrian friends fail with forming any political body or team to lead any future project. So it was not seriously taken from the international community. So it looked like the first year a lot of officers defect from the army. Now, or not now, from 3 years we didn't hear any officers who left the army, because they who did, they let down, they are suffering, living in a very bad circumstances in Jordan or in Turkey, and they have no role in the Syrian revolution. Unfortunately, now what the people who get supported are the conservatives. Now, after 6 years, I think I need to talk about something. All what we, not only the Syrian, the international community don't know what to do with the Syrian dilemma. Assad is presenting himself either me or the chaos, either me or Daesh. So, and unfortunately, as I said, the American administration didn't take the moral and the role and the moral responsibility to deal with it. That's why we see the situation like this now. So, all what we're facing now as Syrian people is because of the false characterization of the problem. So any wrong prognosis will lead to a wrong diagnosis. That's why we should admit that Assad started this war. He knows exactly what he's doing in all vision. That's why he feels very, very comfortable. He chose the time to start it, while the Americans were busy in Iraq, and NATO were busy in Libya, and the whole world was focusing on Egypt. So he started it, and he started it from Daraa, as everyone knows that he propagated the tribes, chiefs in Daraa, and asked them to. That's okay. I'm so sorry. I'm a little bit nervous. So, as I said, I'm from Beit Jan. We were very lucky to be in contact with the Israeli army twice, in 1967 and 1973. The other Syrians were not that lucky to be in contact, so they believe and still believe Bashar al-Assad or this Arab national regime with everything what they say. But now, since it started in Syria, the people saw that even the enemy from yesterday, or what is being presented as our enemy, our Alamite enemy, is helping us. And that's very confusing situation. So a humanitarian supply are running across the border. Our people are having contact with the doctors. The medical facilities are being supported with supplies, with medical supplies along the border in Al-Qunaitra and Jabal al-Sheikh. In order to...
But you want us to show the video that the humanitarian aid?
Yes, sure. How to go?
Do you want to show?
We can show it and can talk.
Okay. Can we have some tech assistance, please? Because
okay, sure,
some prepared
sure.
a special video about the humanitarian aid that Israel is allocating to the Syrians in the proximity of the border.
تقوم الطلبة بجانب فتح الطريق إلى الجبل رغم أنها نسيوا المصاعد والجبال والثلوج.
It's the first time they are climbing the mountain to the Israeli border to get some supplies. And you see that it's very, very hard. He's happy. He will receive some help. He's very happy. Although it's very, very hard to. It's about 5 hours been walking. Can I put Google Earth? Okay. As I said, the Syrian crisis or dilemma is bigger than the Syrian, even bigger than the region. It became international and very complicated. That's why to face it alone as Syrian people, as I said, for over 50 years we have no political life in Syria. The only place where Syrians could gather is the mosque on Friday. That's why the regime was presenting our revolution as an Islamic revolution and against the minorities, and that's wrong. Truth is, the Syrian people. Let's go back to 2004. He put Al Suwaida under siege, and there's Druze, and he attacked Kurds as well because of football play. So all Syrians suffered under this regime, and something must be done. As I said, the Syrian people are too weak and too. The problem is bigger than their ability to deal with. So we need help from the international community. We suggested the project of a safe zone, non-fly zone, along the border to Israel. So we thought it would be reasonable, it would be accepted, because there is a big interest in Israel to keep all the groups, the Islamic groups, away from their border, where Assad is trying to put them there in order to threaten Israel. And the Israeli, in order to understand what we are expecting from the international community, our region in Jolan, in Al-Haram, we are under siege. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon on one side, and the Syrian troops on one side, and Israel on one side. So this corridor, this route, if Israel could provide us with this route just to transport some supplies to the surrounded people, the under siege people, it will be great. We need just a political cover, so in order to not dividing the country, but dividing the problem in order to be able to deal with it. Assalamu alaikum. سيادة العقيد تحياتي. سيادة العقيد أبو صخر تحياتي. عصام زيتون معك. طمني عنك، شو أخبارك؟ أنت هلأ لايف وفي جمهور كبير عم يسمعك هون. بدنا تخبرنا بس عن يعني المشاكل اللي بتواجهوها، عن طبيعة الحياة تحت الحصار، وشو الرسالة اللي بتحب تنقلها للمجتمع الدولي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أقدم الشكر الجزيل
فيديو شكرا لكم. بس اسمحي لنا نتحدث نحن. انا مستعد جاوب على اسئلتكم كلها. انا متوقع اسئلتكم. تفضلي اسالي وانا بجاوبك بعيوني، بس ما تقاطعينا. انتوا عايشين بنعمه هون، انتوا عايشين بنعيم. عيب عليكم. انا كيف بدي انا بساعد، انا مستعد جاوب عن كل اسئلتك. مين قال لك؟ يعني هلا وقت نحكي نحن بالجولان انت محل شو بتعمل هلا؟ صراحة يا عيب الشوم، صراحة يا عيب الشوم، الشعب السوري من 1948 عم يدعم القضية الفلسطينية. هلا نحن تحت خطر تهديد وجودي، عيب عليكم استعوا.
Dear friends, I just remind you that we are in a democratic state, but it's not acceptable to interfere.
I think it's okay to hear such voices, but let me.
Outside is open. If you want to be inside, you are welcome to please keep silence. You are welcome to please keep silence and let our guests, who are welcoming right now, to finish the session.
You are living in a paradise in comparison to the Syrian circumstances. Shame on you, we are being killed. The Syrian people have been supporting the Palestinian issue since 1848. Let me say, and now this attitude, just a minute, I accept, I will answer all your. You want to spoil the event or you want to learn something? If you want to learn something, sit down and listen.
אנחנו מבקשים מכל הבאים לכבד אחד את השני, לכבד את כל מי שדעתו שונה או דומה לשלכם. האנשים האלה הגיעו מרחוק. האנשים...
We have a few questions now that will transfer to us, and obviously there can be a lot of questions regarding to what the presence of the audience said here, and I would like for you first of all to achieve the level of quiet that we used to have before this incident. Okay, this is something that we expected, by the way. It happened, it's okay. This is how democracy looks like. And you know what? Good for us that it is happening. And we are allowing these voices. And we will continue allowing them, although sometimes it's not very comfortable for us to hear what they say. So, I have a question for both of you, please. Short answers. We don't have a lot of time, but we do have a lot of questions here. As a chairman, I have a privilege to ask you the question that I wanted to address you for a while, and I think that will be an interest for our public. I will be an advocate of the devil for a second. We now have many parties, including in the Russian Federation. But not only there, but also there are voices in the United States and Europe who say, well, Syria has been in a horrible turmoil for the last 6 years. There is no outcome. We see the bloodshed that was, unprecedented before the 2011. So, if somebody will now help one party, one of the parties who are there, to reach the level of the stability, to stop the bloodshed, even if it will take to reinstate Bashar Assad as a ruler of the whole Syria, in order to stop the bloodshed. Don't you think that it might be the solution? There are voices that are saying consistently that everything that has happened after the fall of such as dictatorships, such as Iraq, for example, it was much worse that was happening during them. And Iraq is a clear example for that. Now we have more and more voices, even from the Iraqis themselves, who are saying, we didn't have it as bad during the Saddam years. What can you tell to those voices? How do you resist this criticism on the turmoil that is being ongoing and can continue for many more years, please?
Okay, about the political solution, the Syrian people will accept now, at any time, they would be very happy if Assad could make some small reforms, but they were, brutally faced from he will not accept any end of the war without a complete victory. A complete victory is to cancel UN Security Council solution under the 7th chapter regarding al-Hariri assassination. That's what makes Assad go on fighting and mishing the cards in the region. And I'm expected him to do more than this in order to you know, because as soon as the war stopped, he will be asked to invited to the Den Haag in Holland to answer, to give his, to be responsible about the assassination of Mr. al-Hariri. That's why we are sure, and you should also be sure, that Assad will never accept any political solution, even when the 23 Syrians, or what remains from the 23 million Syrians, will come back and apologize to Assad. He will not accept. Now in Bejan, I wanted to I'm so sorry for that, what happened. I wanted to talk about the negotiation, what he's making with the siege areas in Al-Haramoun. Now, after 12 months from siege, he asking them to fight for him. The whole world is talking now about ceasefire, about political solution, about negotiation, but Assad and Iran are forming the fifth division called Iqtiham, fifth division storming. So he's going on in his war. Actually, the international community should intervene because, look, Halab, he destroyed Halab, the oldest city in the world. Now he bombed the Nab al-Barada, which is the main water source for Damascus. So he's going out control. He doesn't have any red line to hold. That's why I hope that he must be taken seriously.
I'd just like to add one more point to that, what Islam mentioned. But before that, I want to comment to the earlier incident, and I'm sorry, I have to go back to it. I couldn't resist. I wish the ladies and the gentlemen who left were here so they could hear this. I asked them to be in Syria one day, live in Syria one day, to understand the meaning of living in Syria. Otherwise, they would have a different opinion of what's happening in Syria.
Okay, go.
Just the fact that you're criticizing us right here is an indicative that you live under a functioning democracy that you wouldn't see elsewhere in the Middle East. So you should be grateful to this. Anyways, and I apologize for stirring this up again, but I had to. This is the problem, because I can't talk to you like this. You have to be more civilized, okay? I can't talk to you like this.
Okay, I think this is really enough. Enough is enough. You had the expression of your view, but now it's about to stop and let our guests to voice out what they have to say. If you are not listening to them, it's not legitimate for you to criticize before you heard what they have to say. I'm sorry, but if the administration of the Truman and the Hebrew University can take care of this, I will be very thankful, because we want to continue, and I'm absolutely sure that 100% of people who came to hear Sam and Sirwan want to hear them right now. Okay, thank you so much. Please.
Thank you. So going back to your question, Ksenia, I think, at the end of the day, after 6 years of fighting and all these, what's been happening, as I mentioned in my earlier comment, it's beyond imagination. So Syrians have given up on, being victimized on a daily basis, and I think it's a right time on either side. I'm not surprised. I really not. Anyways, going back to more important things, I think, and we've been calling for this for the past 3 years, actually since the Geneva started, is for the international community to impose micro ceasefires across the country, because we believe that the conflict has become so hyper-local, and this is what Assad initially wanted, because he wanted the groups and communities from different parts of the country to be busy with their own region, to worry about their own region without paying attention to what was happening elsewhere, because this was a political goal, by the way. He wanted to make sure that to denationalize the revolution in the early stage, and he succeeded, unfortunately. He succeeded in doing so with the help and support from Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and other terrorist organizations, pro-Iranian and Syrian militias. But at this point, there's nothing you can do but hoping for a better future for all parties involved, is to work more on creating different, as I said, micro ceasefires, and built on them, because only a ceasefire can lead to a political solution, whether that be at the local level or at the national level. And we see if the Russians and the Turks and behind them the United States are serious and genuine about finding a political solution, then they can force, their groups that they're supporting, whether it's the government or the opposition, to implement the ceasefire. But it's important to agree on what form of transition we will have in the future, because you won't, and I disagree with many people that ceasefire will bring political stability. I think a political solution, a settlement, an agreement on a political settlement will bring more stability to the country.
Okay, we have, in regards to that, a question about the Russian intervention to Syria. We, the Israelis, suddenly found out that we have a new border with Russia. In this regards, yes, I just reminding of the old story from the Soviet Institute in the 70s, where there is a boring university about the political situation in the world, and communism and the struggles with the capitalism. And one of the students asks, teacher, I wonder, with what countries does the Soviet Union borders with? And that's a tricky question, because there are a lot of countries, of course. So the instructor thinks, and then he says, the USSR is a free country. It borders with whoever it likes, okay? So in this regard, now we have really a new reality, of course. You know that we have a deconfliction center with the Russians, and so now it was very successful for us to solve the immediate issues of the fly zones and so on. But I wanted to ask you straightforward. We see what is going on in Syria. Basically, we have now a free autostrad from Tehran to Beirut to Damascus, okay, in a way that you can bring weapons, you can bring whatever you want. And the Russian aviation so far has been promoting these issues, although Russian officials and Sergei Lavrov just said it yesterday, reminding us all that we need a political solution. However, by emphasizing that we need the political solution, everything that is being done so far by the Russian Federation in Syria is the military steps. Okay, so how do you view this intervention? Can it stabilize or destabilize Syria in your opinion?
Okay, so I'll talk about this briefly, and then Isam can elaborate if he wants. I think Russia is in to stay. Russia is here to stay. It's going to be in the region for a while. Russia has always considered Syria as one of its last bastions of influence and clout, and military and politically in the region. So they will fight tooth and nail to keep this presence, in the region. So when their involvement increased in September 2015, I said it. A lot of people, other activists and people who observe this very closely, said that that's it. It's the end of the revolution as we knew it. Russia was in to end it. It was more decisive than any other group that helped the rebels and the opposition groups. So because they realized what was at stake for them and for their allies. Russia is not, by the way, necessarily happy with the development with Iran. They're not. This is the difference between Russia. For them, it's a strategic alliance with the Assad, not the case with Iran, where it's an ideological expansion, and they want to build on it, pretty much like you mentioned, opening a highway from Tehran all the way to Beirut. So, and they've been successful in doing so. But this brings the matter of, like how important it is to stop the fighting, to be able to limit the expansionist ability of Hezbollah and its, other Iranian proxy groups in the region, because at the end of the day, this will only increase chances of creating instability elsewhere. I don't think Russia looks at that on the long run. I think Russia wants to keep the state, the institution and Assad in power for some time. Maybe it's until 2021, as they suggest, till the next Syrian presidential elections. Even that is not possible. It's not realistic given what's happened over the past 6 years. So they don't foresee that, and I don't know what will happen after the talks in Astana.
In this regard, another foreign policy short question, and then we have something from the audience on the humanitarian aid for you, Sam, following the video that you showed. If we are talking Russia, we cannot afford not to talk about the United States and President Obama's policy in Syria. Many analysts, when they are summing up the period of the last 8 years of President Barack Obama, express pessimism at best, and sum up his policy, especially in Syria, as vacuum that was created by the United States by not interfering, by not promoting its own agenda, by drawing a red line, but then withdrawing from that line. Are you disappointed? What would you want for America to do in Syria, other than that it already did or didn't do?
Well, for me, I think that the Obama's leading from behind policy led to many cases, not just in Syria, but in the broader Middle East, failing to achieve certain goals that the U.S. had initially thought that would be able to do so, and that allowed its adversaries, such as Russia, to expand. So it was only at the expense of countries such as Syria. The same was true in Iraq, where Iranians were basically allowed to operate freely in the country, after so many sacrifices that the U.S. made. Many U.S. soldiers lost their lives to liberate Iraq, and then the country was given on a silver plate to the Iranians. So you see all these inactions of the Obama administration that my only hope is for the new administration that will be in place in 2 days to change that, and I know it will. As for the new administration, I believe that the difference between, as far as Syria policy, will be to look at it from a regional perspective in the framework of fighting, in the context of defeating ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Hopefully that will change the equation on the ground for the Syrians.
Yeah, I have some. I think the most dangerous thing in the American attitude toward the Syrian revolution is giving the Syrian people hope that they will intervene, and they didn't. That's it. So I think in the Green Revolution in Iran last 2008, about 500, 600 were killed, and that's it. No one welcomed their revolution. No one asked them to go on. No one gave them hope, But the Syrian, it was the, the whole world was in the first year very busy with the Syrian issue, trying to describe how tough the Syrian demonstrators are, how bad the regime is, and this message came into Syria, to the Syrian people, that we will get help. That's the most important, dangerous thing from the American or Obama administration, and I hope it will change.
Thank you, Sam. On the humanitarian aid, we have a few questions. I gathered them at a few bites that I hope that you can answer. First of all, I see here in the audience a few people that were active now in gathering funds and gathering food and clothes for Syrian children, Syrian refugees. And of course, this is something that is, it just proves, the Israelis, not all the Israelis think that Syrians are their enemies. Some of them truly act from the, the humanitarian side, seeing hungry children, seeing wounded people and wanting to help. Do Syrians, this first question, even know about it? Are Syrians aware that Israel is gathering, significant funds in Israeli Arab cities also, as well, but also in the Jewish segment of the society, of course, to help the Syrians? This is the first question. The second one, do you believe that it can change attitudes? This approach, humanitarian approach, to this issue, and how do you believe Israel should maintain, this level of involvement? Whether the humanitarian aspect it covers it all. You mentioned already that you would expect, that there will be some route available. But what are other things that? Everybody can hear you now. Perhaps Lieberman is watching us too. What would you want to say to him? What would you need from the Israeli society besides warm clothes and food?
First of all, thank you very much. I would like to thank every person who thought about the Syrian children and the Syrian civilians under siege in those areas, because the circumstances there for the 4th or 5th year are very bad. So they know, first, if you want to know what the Syrian people think about it, you need to give them security. Everyone is fearing now that Assad will take control again in the region, or ISIS. And in both cases, it's very dangerous for our people. So now it's very critical to open publicly. I think if there is any political cover, international or regional cover for any serious project, you will see the real Syrian attitude.
Briefly, I think it will change attitudes, and it will improve in the future relationship between the two nations, because, for decades, pick any Syrian, an average Syrian from either side of the conflict, whether pro-government or pro-regime, and ask them the enemy that you've been told for decades that, is there to kill you, is there, to destroy your existence, is now helping you. Of course it will change attitude. Of course we realize, look, so many things changed in the past 6 years, The protector that's supposed to, shield you from the enemy on the southern border is now killing you, and the enemy that's supposed to kill you is now protecting you. So you see how things have changed. I'm sure many Syrians, actually I know many Syrians, even on other parts, not just in southern Syria, we're very receptive of the idea. By the way, not only humanitarian aid, but also political support. And I think a lot of groups, rebel groups, opposition, political parties are open to the idea to be, more engaged in with the Israeli. And I think, meetings such as this will open the door will encourage many other people from within the opposition to, to come here and speak and, freely express what's happening in Syria. And thanks.
I have here another 2 questions, and then I would ask for you to sum it up with maybe some glance to the future, and what do you see for the coming 2017 year in Syria? I was brought here some papers with the questions. Okay, so maybe you can send another question to my desk, because the people were bringing me some questions written by the paper. Okay. So if you can write them down and bring it here, it would be great. The question about the relations with the Kurds, Sirwan, for you. We know that one of the powers that is operating in Syrian Kurdistan is the PYD. It's close to the Kurdish, the power PKK. The Kurdish of the People Party. Because of the closer proximity right now between Turkey and Israel, and because also in Europe, many powers, and we were just hosting the representatives from the European Union, from the foreign ministries and in the Security Committee, they were saying that, they do not see for the close future coordination and working together with the PKK or any offshoot of PKK. So how do you see vis-a-vis Israel, with what powers Israel can coordinate its work in Syria, given that we do not have a common border with the Kurdish minority there, and building on our experience with the Iraqi Kurdistan, and we had always good relations since the early 60s until this day, trade, also some perhaps military training at some points, would you see this model of relations as viable also vis-a-vis the Syrian Kurds?
This is a very interesting question, and I'm glad you asked, because as for having a Kurdish entity in northern Syria, that hasn't been the notion for the past 6 years, basically since the start of the revolution. And everybody look at the Kurds as one option to benefit greatly from the chaos and the vacuum, the political and security vacuum that was resulted from this war. And but yeah, Kurds have been, we can't deny that Kurds have been the most, or one of the most effective fighting force against ISIS. And ISIS, for many in the West, is the most existential threat. So naturally, you would ally yourself with a group on the ground, a group that is committed, that doesn't have any preconditions, and that will fight for the same values, eliminate ISIS. And it's been working. It started in Kobani in October 2014, and it's been evolving ever since. And I think it's a good experience for the international community to duplicate elsewhere in Syria. Turks are worried about the presence of the PYD and its control of much of northern Syria. And their argument is that the PYD, the major group there, is linked. Well, it's part of the PKK, and the PKK is considered as a terrorist organization by Washington, the EU, and Ankara. So they're always questioning Washington. So the US, EU, and Ankara, not the Russians, no. And they're always asking, Washington, how could you support a group that is supposedly listed on your terror list? So, it's very complicated, because at some point when the Kurds tried to distance themselves from the PKK in Turkey, they were planned for, being more involved with the Syrian government, for example. But I see it from a more practical point of view. I think it's not only, as for the Israel, not only a natural alliance, as many would like to fantasize this idea, is that, well, the Kurds in Iraq, Kurds and Israel share many values. They have a lot of, enemies, common enemies, but I don't necessarily buy that argument. It's not, I'm always against this notion that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. No, but in this case, it's different. There's a natural alliances there. These two groups obviously share many values in terms of gender equality, and they've proven to do it. And these have been put into a practice, whether in Iraqi Kurdistan or in Syrian Kurdistan. So for Israel to, and it's more important for Syria, having Syria as a neighboring country, it's important to build these kind of relationship with all these community, with the Kurds. And I think the Kurds as a group is very open to having more dialogue with the Israeli government and the Israeli people. And as a matter of fact, as we're speaking, there is a group, an aid group in northern Syria called the Israel-Kurdistan Friendship Association, and it has the Israeli flag, and you know what that means. It has the Kurdish flag and the Israeli flag, and that's, of course, it's based in Iraqi Kurdistan, but it has many offices in Qamishli and Derek. So there is a potential to forge such a relationship.
So guys, for the last, a real tough question for both of you. It has to do with you, yourself, living abroad, away from Syria, You are not in Syria. Well, you are visiting it illegally and it's tough and you're endangering your life. But how much you can influence the situation inside Syria by being outside? Well, I can tell you that building on the experience of country from where I came to Israel, which is Russia, we know that some revolutions can be very successful when led from abroad at some point. But where others are not so much. And again, we are looking at the Iraqi experience. The leadership that was brought from afar never took root, and Iraq was disintegrated largely because of this vacuum of leadership. Who stands behind you? Who do you represent? This is the first question that I asked you, Sam, when we met, and I will be glad that if you will taking the fire first. Thank you.
Okay. I'm presenting myself and my family and my friends. I spent 23 years in Syria. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of relevant family, and I know how they think, and I know what is their hopes, you know. So I'm not trying to represent them, or trying to lead them. I'm just trying to convey their voice to the outside world. Of course, there's a lot of opposition figures around the world. So I think we should be everywhere, including Israel, to explain to the whole world what the Syrian problem is, or dilemma is, on how, in which direction it's going to, you know. So we are not leading them, we are just trying to convey their voices.
Yeah, I think the only people that can call them representative, the real representative of the Syrian people, are those on the ground, both politically and militarily. So it's not for us to say who will represent them. It's really, it's up to them to say who will be part of any future engagement. Like Isam said, we're here as their messenger. I personally talked to many people across the Kurdish region, you know, about this visit, and I wanted to get their opinion, their feel about this, and they were all supportive, you know, because at this point they only want the world to understand what's really happening, you know, because what we know is merely from, you know, news reports, things that we are told, but we don't know what's happening on the ground unless you talk to people on the ground. And again, we're not representing them. We are in touch with all different opposition groups, but we're not necessarily representing a specific one.
So at the end, I would ask you to make a very short, in maybe 1 or 2 sentences, prognosis, 2017, what's ahead of us, because we have the last question from the audience about the Golan Heights in all of this crisis. So then, of course, you know, if you would feel that you want to dedicate, you know, your last statement towards Israelis, including Israelis and Druze and Arabs who live in the Golan Heights, then you are most welcome. Prognosis, Syria and Israel, 2017. What do you think will happen? What do you want to happen in Syria?
Well, as I said, we hope that the international community, including Israel, do a magic movement to finish everything in Syria. But let's be realistic. You cannot deal with the whole Syrian dilemma as one unit. The players are too large, too big, and very complicated inside Syria. So if we could start from the border, Syrian-Israeli border, with a safe zone, no-fly zone, in order to establish a normal life for the civilian school. Imagine that there is a generation hasn't been to school since 6 years. So it's a catastrophe. So I think that the most realistic solution is to start with a safe zone on the border, to create, as I said, civil society, to create the medical and education and everything like a small state, and try to extend it by the time.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. As for Israel, I think if Israel wants stability on its border, Syrian border, on the long run, then it needs to invest in Syria, whether that is political support or humanitarian aid, and they do matter. Things like these matter, no matter how small that might be. If you want to be part of the change and it will affect Israel regardless of any involvement, then you need to start now. Actually, my opinion was Israel should have started 5 years ago in 2012. But it's never too late, I think, if you want to be part of the change. And the change will affect you as a nation, as a democracy. So you need to be prepared for that. And in order to be prepared for that, you need to go ahead and try to make a positive change, a change that people on the ground can actually see and appreciate.
Well, I would like to thank our distinguished guests, and I'll just say that it was a real pleasure hearing from you. It's a unique moment in which Israelis and Syrians, 6 years after the launch of the horrible civil war in Syria, talking again to each other. We have a lot of questions to answer together because we are living in close proximity one to another. In my humble opinion, in 2017, we will see the increasing of the influence of Hezbollah, which will strengthen a lot by the developments in Aleppo. We will have to make hard choices in regards to our actions or non-actions in Syria, because if the red lines that we set a time ago, getting the Hezbollah closer to our borders and transshipments of weapons through Syrian territory to Lebanon, to Hezbollah, we would need to rethink our strategy on Syria and to make some powerful and painful decisions in this regard. I believe, and I always believed, that it's smart for us, the Israelis, to speak the language, and نتكلم اللغة العربية, to understand the region, to understand each other, whether we are heading to war or whether we are heading to some peace settlement. We need to keep the channels open. This is important. And this is why the importance of such an event that was organized by Truman Institute for Advancement of Peace. What we are doing now is the advancement of peace. It will not come tomorrow, but in the end it will come. I thank you very much for your attention. Toda rabah and shalom.